One of our major goals with variable expressions is to be able to describe the relationships that we encounter in stories. And so we need to take a moment and think about some of the language that we use to describe the basic operations of arithmetic. So if we want to describe the expression x plus 5, we could use just that phrasing, or we could phrase it in terms of a command as add a number and 5. We could talk about it in terms of increasing, so we could say 5 more than a number, or a number increased by 5. We could use the words sum or total to describe the result of addition. And more generally, any language that seems to describe putting a number and 5 together. Rather than just hunt for keywords, you should be looking for this language that describes putting together. These phrases are phrases that are commonly used, but seeing one of these phrases doesn't guarantee that it's going to be addition, and not seeing one of these phrases doesn't guarantee that it's not going to be addition. What about subtraction? Now, if we wanted to describe x minus 5, we could use just that phrasing. Or we could use the word difference. Just as we could use increasing language for addition, we can use decreasing language for subtraction. Notice the order that the words come in when we talk about 5 less than a number. We say 5 first, but this still represents our number minus 5. We could also just say subtract. And again, notice the order. We say 5 first, but 5 comes after the subtraction. In general, when we're looking for subtraction, we're looking for any language that describes taking away. Addition is putting together, subtraction is taking away. So that's addition and subtraction. What about multiplication? If we want to describe 5 times x, of course we can just use that language directly. Or we could use the word multiply. The term for the result of multiplication is product, so we could refer to the product of 5 and a number. If we're discussing a fraction, we can use the fraction of language we encountered earlier. There are also special terms for multiplying by certain small numbers. We can describe 2 times x as twice a number, and 3 times x as thrice a number. After 3 times, we go back to this however many times language. In general, the thing to look for multiplication is just, we're looking for any language that suggests repeated addition or taking several groups of the same size. So that's multiplication. What about division? If we want to describe x divided by 5, which we might write with a division sign, or we might write as x over 5, well, we could just describe those expressions directly. A number divided by 5, a number over 5. Quotient is the technical term for the result of division, so we could say the quotient of a number and 5. And finally, the last word that we sometimes use to describe division is the word ratio. We might say the ratio of a number to 5 to represent x divided by 5. Now we're going to talk a lot more about this word ratio in the future. The general sort of idea that we often get at with division is just the idea of splitting something into equal-sized groups. So notice, multiplication is the idea of taking several groups of the same size. Division is the idea of splitting something into equal-sized groups. We also have some language to talk about exponents. If we have the expression x to the second power, we can describe that as a number squared or the square of a number. We have similar language for the third power. We can describe that as a number cubed or the cube of a number. Notice the second power is a square, right? A square is two-dimensional. The third power is cubed. A cube is three-dimensional. Beyond 3, we don't have special terms. If we have, for example, x to the fifth, we would just describe that as the fifth power of a number, or a number to the fifth or to the fifth power. The last sort of thing that we want to have language to describe is when we are grouping. So, how do we determine the correct order of operations when we have an expression described in words? The words that we use to describe a group when we're describing expressions is phrasing like saying the result, or sometimes we just say all. In general, anything that suggests doing all the arithmetic so far and then continuing. When you're trying to figure out the order of operations, the key idea is to figure out what happens last. And your friend in looking for that is to look for the conjunctions. In describing the expressions, we will often use the normal English conjunction and, but also conjunctions that refer to operations, plus, minus, times, or divided by. Let's see some examples here. Let's say we have the product of 7 and the sum of a number and 3. So there's going to be some multiplying, right? The fact that it starts by saying the product suggests that multiplication is going to be the last operation. So the product of one thing and another thing. So the product of 7 and the sum. What sum? The sum of one thing and another thing. So the sum of a number, let's call it x, and 3. Notice how we parsed that. We parsed it from the last operation inward. And as soon as we knew we needed multiplication, we wrote a times sign with some parentheses, and then we figured out what ought to go in the parentheses. We might go ahead and write this a little bit more nicely. 7 times x plus 3. We don't need parentheses around just the 7. We don't need a times sign. We can just write the number next to the parentheses. Let's see another example. Here we're told 6 is added to a number. The result is then multiplied by 3 less than that number. So we're going to start with this first sentence. 6 is added to a number. That refers to a number, let's call it x plus 6. Notice x and 6 can come in either order. Next we see that it says the result. What result? The result of the previous operation. That tells me put x plus 6 in parentheses. Is then multiplied by something. By what? By 3 less than that number. The fact that it's that number tells me I should use the same variable. So I should use x again. 3 less than x is x minus 3. Again, rewriting this to look a little bit nicer, we'll have x plus 6 times x minus 3. And that's all there is to writing an expression from a story. When you're working with a story like this, don't be afraid to mark it up. Don't be afraid to circle the terms that are telling you what to do right now.